You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free.
All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to another week of the Oola Girls. So first of all, I just want to send out a huge get well very, very soon to my fellow Oola girl, Michelle. Just know that we love you, and I hope everybody can help me send lots of positive energy her way, because unfortunately she's not well enough to be with us here today. So I hope you feel better soon, Michelle. I really, really miss you. But on another note, I am also super excited to have another fellow Oola coach here with me today. Rick, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So I'm going to just say like a couple of things. I'm going to say life coach, podcast host, husband, father, and someone with a deep fascination of human and animal behavior. Like those seems to be the things that kind of describe you. Tell me a little bit more, Rick.
Well, yeah, my journey into coaching really started many years ago. I didn't realize it though until now. I can get some perspective on it. I've always, my whole education, my background is in animal and human behavior. That's my profession. That's what I do. I've worked as manager and supervisor, special projects coordinator, working both in the animal world and also, in other realms. Started doing lecturing at a college, and started then from that process mentoring some of the college students as they would transition from sort of that college lifestyle to that career. And for many of us, that's a simple step. We have a supportive family. We understand the process. It works well. Many people, though, also don't have that support or that knowledge. Excuse me. They might be the first in their generation or in their family to make that leap, to have that happen. And so there's a lot of support needed there. So I was mentoring quite a few students and mentoring people in my field too that were facing maybe challenging times. And so my own curiosity and just love of helping people has always been there. But then I had my own trials and tribulations occur about a year ago that really kind of opened the door for me, make me realize that coaching and supporting and caring for other people in that sort of supportive realm is really where my passion is.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, tell me about like human behavior, animal behavior. Like, what was it that drew you towards that field in your world? Yeah, for you.
Well, as a child, I have dyslexia. You always have dyslexia, it doesn't go away. But as a child, it was not diagnosed. We didn't know what it was at that time. And I lived in a small town. There wasn't a lot of knowledge about these things. And it was a while ago. I'll say that,
It's a couple of years.
Yeah,
Who's counting?
So I always kind of felt that I didn't fit in. It was weird to be growing up and seeing your peers being able to read easily, write easily, do these things that for them, it appeared from my perspective was very simple. And it wasn't just a few people, it was everybody. And for me, this was something that was very hard and challenging. I could never grasp it. And so that part of it compiled with, then I really just always connected so well with animals. If I would go over to someone's house, I wanted to know where the pet was. Where's the dog? Where's the cat? And I wanted to spend time with animals. I had pets growing up. Just always fascinated. And because reading was so challenging for me, the only thing that could ever really get me to start enjoying reading or even read anything was something about animals, because I wanted to learn more about them. So I'd really just plow through trying to get through the reading process just to try and absorb more information. So for me, animals and learning about them was kind of the one sort of saving grace in the world that I felt comfortable in, and couldn't, even though it was hard to read, I wouldn't get derailed or disenchanted by the process, because I wanted to learn what was in that book, about those animals. So that started me on a path of then learning at a higher education behavior and everything about different species that I've worked with over the years. And it's allowed me then to also, it has been the avenue to allow me to reconnect with people and share my passion and love and knowledge of animals with people. And then through that process, it has then kind of linked me back into understanding that the way we behave as humans, act and interact, is founded in the general basic animal behavior. You take Psychology
Yeah.
101, you learn animal behavior first, because that's the foundation, the root of behavior. And then, of course, humans are a bit more complex than most species. And so there's a lot more that comes into that when it's culture, socialization, family expectations, etc. But at the root, we are still in that same realm of behavior. And it's truly, I'm never not curious about it. I'm always looking stuff up and trying to learn more about it just on my own curiosity.
Yeah.
That curiosity serves me well then as a coach in supporting my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I my education is in nursing because my passion, I guess my reason for being here was always to help people.
Mm-hmm.
But I found in the nursing um, setting, it wasn't what I really wanted to do.
Right.
Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to help. I think the way I put it now is I want to be the prevention instead of the cure.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want to be there to help people heal. I want to get them to a point where they're already healed, and again, psychology is such a huge thing. The way we think is often the way we are, and even in where I am now, which is completely away from anything that has to do with nursing, but it has to do with people.
Right.
And the first thing I teach my people, or my kids, I call them my kids, everybody's my kids,
Right.
is that as humans, the first thing that we react to is that animalistic instinct, that seeking of order, for example, is something that is just an instinct. We don't even know where it comes from, but we turn to go towards order instead of chaos. And that's, it's just psychology, and human behavior to me is something that fascinates me a lot.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, a lot of times I believe many people don't recognize within themselves the what I call as the foundation behaviors or animalistic behaviors, the ones that are sort of that we're preset with,
Mm-hmm.
and how things that we've experienced in the past have created then our perception of and our reaction to things of today. And it's when you sit down with someone and really have that discussion, sort of mine back into the history of certain thoughts or responses, that you start to learn, and they start to go, oh yeah, and they have those aha moments where you can kind of shine the light back in that corner a little bit, and give them that sort of, oh, now I get it, that makes sense, because you're
Mm-hmm.
using that sort of, as you said, that foundational or basic principles of behavior, why we seek order, or why we respond to certain things, or how habitual behavior can set us up for either success or failure depending upon
Yeah.
what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, we are extremely habitual beings. And that's one thing that I'm noticing for myself now that I'm back to work.
Yeah.
And, I notice myself, I fall back into that old habit that I had before with, maybe overworking, maybe not eating well,
Yes.
maybe
Easy
uh,
habits.
I know. And that's after a year of having taken care of myself and developing very, very healthy habits,
Right.
because that's what the corona, period allowed for me to do,
Mm-hmm.
was to really kind of set myself right and set myself up for success. And after a week of being back to work, I see myself falling back to those old habits and I think you and I talked a little bit about this, like living on coffee, like you're
Yeah.
literally living on coffee all day instead of stopping and having that healthy meal that you would have
Mm-hmm.
before. And so, our habits in so many ways are so ingrained, which is also something that you meet when you work with clients as well, right? For
Yep.
have them, first of all, to recognize those habits.
Yes. Yeah. And, I mean, if I don't know if you want to jump into sort of, how
Yeah, that's I was
in
wanting to use that as a segue. So
okay, well, good, because it fits into what you're saying, and because it was,
hmm
for me, it was a real aha moment. You mentioned the pandemic and all of that, and what I mean, so the pandemic creating an opportunity for us to learn how to take better care of ourselves because we're either working from home or out of work, but then also going back into it, like you said, and then falling right back into those bad old habits. And so for me, my story, like I had said, I had been working full time, lecturing at a college, and being an instructor, mentoring people, and always thought about becoming a certified life coach, but it was like, oh, I'll put that off. I'll do that some other time. But then, gosh, it was probably February. Yeah, February of 2020. So before the pandemic really struck here in the United States, I was just taking on everything at work that I could. And I had this mentality that it's just, yes, I can, because I need to get things done. And then at home, you come home and, there's, got to take care of the stuff around the house and everything else. My wife works also, and she wasn't feeling well. So she was, kind of down a bit. So I was kind of picking up extra stuff. And it was just, I'd be up till 11:30 at night, midnight, and then try and get up at 5 a.m. and start all over again. And that's horrible for bad sleep pattern. But then I relied heavily on coffee. I mean, ridiculous amounts of coffee all throughout the day. And even if coffee wasn't available, I could mentally push myself to kind of get this adrenal push. Like, oh no, I got to do it. I got to do it. I'd psych myself up. I'd really psych myself up to just push through and get things done. So as February is going along, all of a sudden I start to notice I'm losing some weight, and I'm getting this tightness in my throat that started to result in sort of this lump that I had. And I was like, oh my gosh, a thyroid issue. What's going on? Uh, it's right about that time that things really started to come to a head for me. And I wasn't even mentally aware of it. I was so focused on just going from minute to minute to minute, getting everything done I could get done, that it wasn't even clicking to me that there's something really wrong that I'm doing. It was like, oh, there's something, it must be a thyroid issue. So I got blood tests done. I got scans done, ultrasounds, all the things, and everything came back. There's nothing there. It's fine. There's nothing wrong.
Wow.
But it was hard to swallow. I could feel that this lump right here, the doctor had even palpated a little bit, and she's like, well, yeah, there's something there. And long and the short of it, it took several months into the pandemic, because things shut down here in San Diego in mid-March, and which I think pretty much kind of did everywhere throughout the US. That process then gave me the time it was a forced timeout, a forced stop,
Yep.
and I started to realize what I had been doing. And finally got a specialist who, after he looked through all the scans and blood work, he said, well, how's your stress level been? And this is a throat specialist. And I said, oh, it was up until we, had to shut things down for the pandemic. It was through the roof. I recognized at that point that it was really, really, really bad. And he's like, okay,
Wow.
well, what are you doing now? And for that, and by that time I had started kind of unraveling this thing, and sure enough, my throat had started getting better. And long and the short of it is a clinical medical condition that when you're overstressed and in that constant fight or flight mode, which is where I had placed myself so I can get through everything, the neck muscles will tighten and actually almost cramp up, like you'd get like a cramp in your leg. And that's what was
Wow.
causing the lump and the tightness. And although nothing showed up on any scans, because it's just muscle tissue.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to sit down with myself and really not only evaluate how I had been living my life, but then it's like, okay, where do I go from here? So I chose, because I'd been mentoring people for a while, about 4 or 5 years as a mentor. I'm like, okay, well, if I separate myself momentarily from my life and kind of look at myself, reflect, and go, okay, if I was someone coming to me saying, this is what I've done this last couple of years to myself, this is where I find myself now, and I don't want to do this anymore. And it's not that I don't want to do the job or do what I do for my family. It's that I don't want to get stuck in this nonstop fight or flight loop. So I really took the time to kind of research even further, dealing with stress, managing stress. How do you kind of reset everything?
Mm.
First step was slowly getting off of coffee. If anyone's tried to quit coffee cold turkey, it hurts, especially if you've been having a lot of it. So for me, it was a process of slowly trading out the beans in my grinder for decaf beans, and then also slowly decreasing the amount of intake. And I'm talking a couple pots of coffee a day when I'm
Wow.
saying I had a lot of coffee. And so now, along through the process, about 3 months, I was able to go down to just 1 cup of green tea every morning. And I've maintained that, and I'm sticking with it because it's been incredibly good for me. Also, like you had mentioned, the bad habit of just plowing through your day and not eating
Mm-hmm.
nutritionally. I really started paying attention to my nutritional intake. And it's
Yep.
not that you have to do anything extravagant. It wasn't, some people get very stressed out about nutrition. It was more just looking at, do I need those crackers or should I have some fruit instead? Have a banana, have some blueberries, or as a snack midday versus a
Mm-hmm.
handful of crackers. Things like that. Just a little stuff really adds up across the day. And the other thing that I made myself do is promise myself 30 minutes of exercise every day, whatever it may be. It could be yoga, could be a walk, could be doing, calisthenics, push-ups and sit-ups and things like that. But 30 minutes of keeping myself active physically to kind of
Mm-hmm.
reset those hormones and that part of it. And as I went through this process, I really started to notice a shift in about 3 or 4 months of everything. I was sleeping better. I
Right.
was thinking more clearly.
Clear.
I wasn't so quick to just get in that mode of something happened that went wrong. I could really start to feel every part of me shifting physically, mentally, emotionally, and that was a real big step for me there. And one thing I want to mention, I coached this, but I also learned this through the idea of understanding our bad habits. It's
Mm-hmm.
you can't just say I'm going to eliminate coffee and then eliminate that, because what you're eliminating too is not just the chemical addiction of the caffeine, but you're eliminating the process of making the coffee, whatever that process is for you in the morning.
Yeah, the
Or
emotional attachment to whatever it is, you're
right.
eliminating that as well. And that's a huge point. I remember when we turned from a normal, like standard American diet to vegan diet, the first Friday when we couldn't have pizza with cheese on it, I was on the floor crying, and I'm not even kidding. And I was like, why am I crying? It's just one night without, and we didn't have vegan cheese at that point because this was like a few years ago. But the emotional attachment to these things, to these habits, they're so, they're the most difficult parts, I think, to get over and to recognize.
Absolutely. And it's not just the emotional attachment to the habit, it's that you have created several cues throughout your routine that your body and mind then expect the outcome.
Right.
So if you eliminate one of those steps or you eliminate the outcome, then yes, the emotional upset and the physical, it's an actual physiological response to this is completely changed. And it then not only do you emotionally get sad or upset, but then to soothe yourself, your body, your mind says, I need to go back into this old routine because this is what I know.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I'm comfortable, even if it's not good for you.
Yeah.
So the process most people need, myself included, is find ways to start shifting the dynamics of replacing a bad habit with the good habit. It's not just take it away. You need to
Mm-mm.
find something to transition and replace. And so what's worked wonderful for me is, of course, is my morning tea. I still have the routine of making it. I still have the routine of enjoying that. It's too hot to drink, so I'm going to hold it for a little bit and just let that moisture and that warmth come to my face. All of those steps are still there, but it's been a shift, and I've got a
Yeah.
client who was told recently that they have to quit coffee for digestive issues, the acidic part of it. And they were kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've always enjoyed my morning cup of coffee, sitting on the patio in the morning. And I'm so well,
Mm.
still, and so in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to try and just eliminate the whole thing. His morning routine's now shot. So I'm like, no, get warm water then, or get tea if you can have tea. I'd check with your doctor, but something that you can still have this routine and this habit, because otherwise it's going to be too hard to quit, and you'll fall back into it, and it's going to be more damaging in the long run. And so,
Yeah.
back to what I went through then was that I started to really focus on these key components: my fitness, my intake of nutrition, and my mental health, and then started focusing on the priorities around my family as well. And all of these things then are interconnected. And it wasn't then probably, so that was, it all started, like I said, in March. And then probably by June, July, August, I was really starting to consume a lot of content on coaching, on this idea of really taking a different perspective of how we can be proactive in our life. And I was, reading stuff by Jay Shetty, Mel Robbins, all the big names, and great, intelligent people. And I came across this book called Oola, Finding Your Balance. Yeah. Finding Balance. And I have it on my bookshelf. Oh, it's just blocking your face because your screen.
Oh, yes, because of
You
the screen share.
disappeared.
Yeah. Finding balance in an unbalanced world.
Right. And
Yeah.
it was just one of the many things I was consuming to learn more. And I'm getting through this book and I'm like, my goodness, this is like a chunk of this person's book. This is a chunk of all the things that were in this one book were kind of all of the good parts, all the sweet
Yeah.
spots of the other stuff I had been consuming and reading. And some of the things I just had discovered on my own. And I was like, this is this, and it was, in the way it was written, it wasn't to that level of where you felt like I have to look up these words. It wasn't that going over your head. It was really at a very personal consumer level, like someone just talking to you who's a good friend. And
Yeah.
I started to look into the authors and Dave and Troy and trying to understand more of it, found content online, found their Instagram, found the Facebook stuff. And I had always had, like I'd said before, in the back of my head of wanting to become a life coach. And then sure enough, they're offering this Oola Life Coach certification. And I was like, well, wow, this is interesting, So I looked into it and I started looking into other coaching programs too, really started diving into what it is to be certified and what's required and expectations and the process. And I kept coming back to Oola every time. And so I set up a meeting in, probably September to talk to one of the advisory coaches about the certification process. And okay, well, I'm not making any decisions now. I'm just letting you know, I'm just finding out information. I was being very, very cautious. I went back and looked at other programs and stuff, and it kept coming back to Oola. And I'm so glad I did. I finished the process of getting certified November of 2020 and picked up my first client shortly thereafter, and now have 4 ongoing clients that I work with on a weekly basis. And I've got another person that I work with for every 3rd week. And it has been an amazing process to now look back to where I started with my fall apart with all of my stress, and now to be at a place where I can reach back and help other people going through that and help other people through some of their challenges. And one of the things I'm sure you've talked about, in other shows, Oola has the 7 principles and the seven different key areas. And I'll have clients seem like, oh, well, I'm fine with family, or I'm fine with finance. What I really need help with is this. But then as you start to get into those 7 F's, the client realizes that everything is interlinked. It all overlays one way or another, and everything impacts some other aspect. And it's just been wonderful for me as a coach, because even when you're coaching a client, you're still learning along with them as well.
Oh, I know.
Right.
I know.
It's like you're always improving your life because you're working with others that are improving their life. It's like that old saying, whoever you surround yourself with is what you become. And it's just been a wonderful experience.
So with that in mind, with the Oola and Oola Fs, and I've been talking a lot about Oola, on this program since, back in November as well. So obviously we talk about the 7 Fs of Oola, we talk about the Oola wheel. So when you first took your Oola wheel, how did that look?
Well, it wasn't too surprising. So if anyone's watching that's not familiar with, you answer a series of questions, you chart out then on spokes that creates a wheel for you, these different 7 key areas and how you're doing. And if you have an area that is a little low, of course, that puts a divot in the wheel, or several areas that are low. The bumpier the wheel, usually the more it tells you where you really need to start focusing your efforts on.
Yeah.
And there were no surprises, where I was at that time. It was September, so I'd kind of really already had a very conscious experience going through kind of repairing and rebuilding myself. So when I first did it, and I did it where I was in the moment, things were pretty good on that for the most part. But I also went back and entered it as if I was myself back in February. and it was a mess. Fitness was the trash.
Yeah.
Your family was not doing so well because I was working so hard and everything else, just trying to get things going. So yeah, and then friends and fun didn't even acknowledge on the chart at all. So yeah, when I went back and
Yeah.
answered it as if it was me in January, February, the beginning of the year versus where I had gotten myself to, it was quite different. And that's one thing I love about the wheel is that you can keep going back to it, and it's always going to
Mm.
kind of be ebbing and flowing, and kind of really, shines lights in the corners where maybe you don't think to look because you're so busy focused
Hmm.
on one other thing, you don't realize you're kind of lacking somewhere else, and that it's so
Yeah.
important for bringing that balance.
I think it's super important as well. And especially to go back and do the wheel, maybe every, 2, 3 months, just to kind
Hmm.
of, find out where you are with
Right.
yourself, because you do go through different seasons in your life. And I know for me now, this past 4 to 5 weeks have been purely field. Yeah, it's been a field season. And but to go and then have that opportunity to recheck and say, okay, I know this has been a field season, and where do I need to move on from here? So you know with you, like, what was the aha moment that kind of made you decide that I need to switch focus for a moment? Obviously your bodily reaction to the stress
Yeah.
was one of them.
I mean, I think the big sort of it was a big knock on the head, honestly. It was a physical body saying you can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was it. And that sometimes that's why I'm so bullheaded sometimes, and so like just no, get focused, go, which can be an attribute at certain times, but also can cost you your health if you do it wrong. And that's what I had done. I had done it wrong, and for me, it was really just my body saying enough is enough, and being forced into timeout then by the pandemic. If the pandemic had not happened, I still would have probably gone through this process. It would have looked different. It would have been different because I still would have had to have been tackling my work schedule and everything else. But I think I would have still gotten to that point where it's like, okay, I need to make a change here. And
Mm.
the adjustments would have been smaller, and it might have taken longer to go through the process. But with the pandemic kind of closing everything down, the first few weeks there was nothing. There was meetings just to see how everything's were going, but things were for the most part closed down. So it really gave me that time to focus and reflect. And now, and I think like you said too, it's being more aware. What I learned from
Mm.
last year was being more aware and you mentioned being in a season, meaning then that right now I recognize for X amount of time, I'm really going to have to put family and friends and fun kind of off to the side a little bit, tell them I love them, tell them that I'm here, but I have to really devote myself to this project.
Mm-hmm.
But once that project's over, don't get sucked into this is how my habits and behaviors shall always be. But to recognize now I have to make a
Exactly.
conscious step to going back and getting reunited with my family and friends and fun, and putting field over here for a little bit and saying, I'm out of pocket for the next couple of weeks or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and that for me, I think has been the big thing is being conscious, being very thoughtful in my
Mm-hmm.
weekly schedule, my daily schedule, and recognizing, okay, this next couple of weeks, I've really got to dive into doing this, or next couple of weeks, I'm going to be completely unavailable for these people because I have to do this. But recognize that you've got to step back. You've got to
Yeah.
have that ebb and flow. You can't just push, push, push.
Yeah, I say to my clients, if you have the awareness, then that's half of my job done.
Yeah.
Because because actually knowing where you are and understanding that something is
Mhm.
not working in my life in this moment, that is the first step. It's not a very good analogy, but if you're an alcoholic, to say yes, an alcoholic, that's the first step.
Right.
And so I think that's super important, having that awareness. And you said as humans we have a little bit more than on top of that animalistic behavior, and I think that's one of the things we have, or I know that's the one thing that we do have, the ability to be aware, not only
Right.
about other people's behaviors, but about our own as well. So I want to there's it's great to be aware. That's the first step.
Hmm.
And then the second step is then finding out, how do I change this?
Right.
But then the third step, which I think in many cases can be the most challenging one, especially with what we talked about with habits and all of that, how do you maintain it? So what has been your
Hmm.
secret in being able to maintain that, I guess, more balanced life, that life where, you can recognize when you're kind of heading off in the wrong direction, or where you can feel your stress levels going up. Like, what has been your, managing tools, or your tools to maintain that?
Well, I think there's several ways to answer that. There's a lot. I think that at the core of it all, though, I know many people, and I'm part of that group, where you need to make a change. You go to the grocery store, you buy all the fresh fruits and vegetables, and you're going to cook at home instead of you're buying at a restaurant or takeout, which is bad for you and costs more. Or you're going to go to Target and only buy what you need from Target, not buy all the cool stuff you see on the way to the things you need to buy, right? Like, oh, I really need that air humidifier. I've never needed one before, but that one looks pretty cool. It lights up.
Yep.
Whatever it may be. We have those periods where, like, no, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out, and you're in it for 3 months. You're just, I'm doing it. But then something comes up. A family member visits, so I'm not going to the gym this week, or family member visits and we're going to go out and be tourists in my town because it's a cool town, and so I'm not going to cook at home, whatever version of that may be. Or Christmas rolls around and you want to just buy all the things for all your family at Target. And then you don't go back to the regimen you had set for yourself that's either healthier or financially smarter or whatever. We're easily fall back into our old habits. And so, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of things out there that try to sell people on this. You can change your life if you buy this package or you do this. But the thing is, there's no back end to it. Once they go through this program or whatever it may be, they're left to their own devices, and their own devices is what put them in the place they were before. And I'm no different. So what's worked for me is one of the great things, the example that the Oola guys give, in the Oola program, we do this as coaches, is we talk about there's these big things, how you really want to live your life, but then there's all the little things you have to do within your life. And the analogy they use is oranges and Skittles. Oranges being bigger than Skittles, they use a glass vase. You can put all the oranges in this glass vase just fine if you're only using the oranges. But if you pour the Skittles in first, all the little things that happen throughout your life, you can't fit all the oranges in anymore. However, if you're prioritizing your oranges first, the things you want to do to achieve the life you want, then you can pour the Skittles in around the oranges, and everything fits in the vase. And the vase is your life or your day. So that analogy translates then to what they recommend as a 3x5 card. You put a line down at one side as everything you have to do that day: laundry, grocery run, drop the kids off, pick the kids up. And then on the other side, what are some action steps, some things you can do then to start working a step a day towards your goal? For me personally, what has worked tremendously to keep me on task is that concept. I have a planner set up. There's the 3x5 card. Yep. I have a planner set up that across the top are my goals and what am I going to do that week then to be steps towards those goals. And then each day I have every hour figured out. Now, that doesn't mean I'm planned through every hour. It just means that I know when my meetings are. I know when I have a window of time that I can work on my podcast, or I can work on doing a YouTube video, or when is my next client meeting that I have, and then when's my follow-up with them? When do I have time to write my notes on that? When do I have time for my 30 minutes of exercise? When am I going to start meal prep for a healthy meal? And it seems like a lot to go, wow, when are you going to plan your planner? Every Sunday evening, I just sit down, I write everything out. And then my week is set for me. And it's really helped keep me on task because it allows me to keep myself accountable. And the other part of it, the other thing you said, what is it that I have found personally for me that helps when I feel that stress coming back on or there's things going on? Part of my exercise routine is doing meditation in the evenings and breath exercise. And I can't say enough. I did not realize, I used to do yoga, and I do yoga still as part of my exercises, but the actual sitting down and doing conscious breath work and meditating, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes a day, at first you feel like you don't understand it. It's like the analogy of riding a bike for the first time. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not fun at all. It's wobbly. For me, meditation the first couple of weeks was not relaxing and I didn't feel much different. But once I got the practice past, or once I got past the practice of it and started really getting into a rhythm of it, I recognize now that as soon as anything, I can feel my body change from stress, from whatever, then I can just do a couple of my breathing thoughts and think about, no, relaxing my system and really giving myself a moment is very powerful. It has made all the difference in the world to help maintain not falling back into my old habits and my old responses to stress.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, meditation and prayer is just so powerful, and it's something
Yes.
that, I am myself trying to. I say trying to because, like I said, I've fallen back into a little bit of my old bad habits now. But Oola keeps me in track, and this program as well. But it's such a powerful thing. I also integrate a little bit of emotional freedom technique in it, which is basically tapping, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically the communication with that fight and flight system to bring your thoughts from your frontal lobe to your, back, or the other way around. I'm now messing it up, but anyway. um, that's meditation, anything that kind of calms you down, sits you down, and just helps you reconnect with yourself is just so important.
Yeah,
And
it's that awareness. I think that often we, in our modern times, especially, we're so forward thinking of moving ahead of what's next or dealing with whatever.
mhm,
We don't get in the practice of not minding what our body is telling us. And that the tapping work that you're talking about, or the breath work of meditation, I think kind of reconnects us and really pays attention. Why I'm feeling stressed. I can tell my body is responding,
mhm,
and we can get ahead of it then before it becomes a chronic issue, which is so
absolutely.
important.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that when you were talking about how your body was literally physically talking to you,
Yeah.
like it's telling you to stop, because if this keeps growing, you're not going to be able to breathe, or
Yeah.
it's telling you to just slow down. If you take that minute and you just listen, you just scan your body and you just listen, your body will always talk to you, will always tell you what you need to do. Is such a fantastic mechanism that we have here, and we need to learn how to listen to it.
Yeah. And I'd gotten in the bad habit of not listening to it. Like I would notice something
Same.
was off, and I'd be like, I don't have time for that right now. I got to grab my coffee, we're going to granola bar and head out the door. I don't have time to deal with the headache, or I don't have time to deal with this, and
Yep.
that's exactly it. Now it's like, no, wait a minute. What's going on? Do some breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see where we're at, and it only takes an extra couple minutes or two.
Yeah,
It's not something that's going to ruin your day if you check in with yourself. And if anything, it's going to make
absolutely
you
not.
be able to focus better, be able to thought process better, problem solve better. In the long run, it's a much more efficient way to live.
I love the analogy. Put the oxygen mask on on yourself
Yes.
first, because
Yep.
if you think it's selfish for you to take that minute to do that breath work, or to do that 5 minute, simple meditation, because you have to do A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. But
Mm-hmm.
you're not, at the end of the day, you're not helping the people around you. You're not going to do your tasks the way you do. You need to take care of yourself first. And I think
Right.
that's just so important. So thank you so much, Rick. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and hear your story. So for anybody out there that would like to talk to you, or hear more about you, what's some of the ways that they can reach you?
Well, I'm most excited to say last month I launched my podcast. It's titled We All Have Something. It's on all podcast players. So you can just search for We All Have Something. And if that's not your thing, you can head to my website, coachrickschwartz.com, just as it sounds, coachrickschwartz.com. And that's kind of a landing page for everything. You can find all my social media there. You can find Coach Rick Schwartz on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm on YouTube as well. I do a lot of videos there that I hope are 10, 15-minute videos to help people out. And it's just, I love the idea of being that voice of that person that maybe someone who was where I was in early 2020 needs that rope to hold on to and find something. And if you're interested in coaching, you can reach out to me through my website. We can do a free 30-minute sort of discovery call, figure out if what my style of coaching is something that would serve you well. And if not, we're very honest with each other about what works and doesn't work. And we can go from there. So I'm happy to connect with people on social media or there on the website.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us here
Oh, thank
today,
you.
and it's been a pleasure. I love this conversation, and this is putting a highlight on such an important, subject that I feel this modern society of ours as well. It kind of, you know, everybody's wearing this dress as a badge of honor. It's like, I'm so
Yeah.
stressed. That means I'm so busy. But no, we need to stop. We really, really need to, stop and take a step back and reevaluate. I feel in some ways.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
thank
Absolutely.
you for helping me shed some light on that,
My
and
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
my pleasure as well. And I will be back next week with hopefully my fellow Oola girl, Michelle. But until then, uh, be grateful, have faith, and go get your Oola life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was